Ensemble, and the Jazz Ensemble has a lot of different kind of people in this one. We have a concert pianist, we have a person that's never been on stage before, and the Jazz Ensemble is a growing group of the jazz idiom, and it starts out with a little bit of the old B-flat blues on a couple of blues heads. One of them is Duke Ellington C-Jam Blues, and we just travel into Jumpin' with Symphony Sid, which is an old blues head from Louisiana. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the Jazz Ensemble. Yes, this group started out with just learning first B-flat blues and what the blues scale is, and they also moved on to playing a couple other pieces. But we also have an original one, and that was a project we took upon ourselves. No music is involved, like the piece you just heard. There was no written music out. We just took the improv solo and pretty much just took it from the top and went down the line. So this next one is titled Killer Joe, and it starts out with a nice walking bass line, if he's ready. What we call a band. So if one of the guys is late, he just plays forever and a day. He knows what notes he's got to play, and he's just keeping on walking. He doesn't know when we're going to start because nobody's really figured that out yet. We know when we're going to start, and I think I'll just let him walk a little bit longer. You might have heard this in some other commercials. It's a very popular walking bass line. I think the Peanuts have used it a while. One, two, three. out, and we just took it in a different key. And so my vocalist is coming out here, and she knows the words, but doesn't know the key. So the key is coming from the piano. Nancy, are you ready? Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Ellen Hanna. This school, and I tell you, just in the woodwork. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to close off this section with an original tune. And this is the first time this guy's been in an ensemble. It's the first time he's been on stage for a long period of time. And it's the first time he's had his own piece played for anybody. So, Declan, you ready to go to town? Okay. So, we have no music again. What we did is we started this as a project. They sort of put things together, and then the horns put some lines together, and here it is, Declan Project 1.